Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Hilaal Live. Thanks for joining us, watching us on channel 347 from the Cape Town studios. I'm Luqman Shadrack. In studio, back for the new year to start our legal hour, Advocate Yusuf Khan Dalwai. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Luqman, to you and your viewers as well. Nice to be back again.
Lovely to have you back. A lot has happened since you've been back.
Indeed.
Or been away.
Been away at
Let's
least,
put it that way. We all have our ears and eyes peeled to the case that's happening at the International Court of Justice at the moment. South Africa taking center stage with taking that legal case to the ICJ, letting them know exactly what we're concerned about. And we heard some very robust arguments presented from South Africa, and we had the counter argument addressed by Israel as well. In your legal opinion, Advocate Yusuf, were there key legal principles that played a significant role in shaping how this case now unfolds?
Luqman, I think I first need to unpack something, and it's important for the viewers.
Right.
And that is to inform our viewers that this case that was brought to the ICJ is a preliminary case.
Right.
Okay. So it's basically with the aim to obtain a provisional order or an interim order for Israel to desist or cease, any acts of genocide or humanitarian crime against humanity.
Yeah.
So South Africa has brought this application to the ICJ, particularly with the authority under the Act, the Genocide Convention Act of 1948.
Right.
And they've submitted a very compelling argument whereby they invoked the Act, provisions of the Act, and they've unpacked and substantiated various scenarios, incidents, and presented evidence in support of their application. And as South Africans, we should feel very proud of our legal team that has done so and has taken the initiative, particularly after the various support of South Africans and all over the world, the support that and the outcry of ceasefire in Palestine. So yes, they've made very compelling arguments, and one that stands out quite boldly to me is that if you look at the convention itself, the Genocide Convention, Article 1, just the very first provision in it, it states that an act of genocide or an act of genocide is unlawful, even in the time of peace or in war. And
that's a very, very bold statement.
Very bold statement.
Yeah.
So and our legal counsel has unpacked and substantiated and presented evidence to the court in order for them to see it in that light and make a decision accordingly.
Yeah. How amazing was the way they unpacked their case as well. They had various different people unpacking each argument or each point that they would like to bring across. And they articulated it so well.
Indeed. In the international courts, it's like it's quite intimidating.
Yes. Well, the other guy ruffled his papers and lost his papers.
Yeah. So and becomes very overwhelming. So to break down your case into various categories, because a case like that, I notice an application has various sections, right? And if one legal practitioner focuses on one section, it gives that practitioner the ability to center its focus and present a good argument. Although there's collaboration with all the entire legal team, but it does definitely help.
But also, we must consider that South African law is very different to how laws are perceived around the country, around the world, as well. Bringing their case forward, they obviously had to align it with the ICJ and how they see cases or how they hear cases. That must have been quite a task as well.
So Yeah, it's not a task because each court has its own rules.
Oh, yeah, correct, yeah.
Even in South Africa,
Correct.
the High Court has its own rules. The District Court has
Correct.
its own rules.
Yeah.
The Labour Court has its own rules.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has its own. The Constitutional Court has its own rules.
Right.
And so it goes. Any other court, ICJ, ICC, they all have its own rules.
Okay.
So it's important for a practitioner when bringing an application to familiarize itself, with those rules so that they can conform with the procedure of that court.
Gotcha. If you've been following the case very closely, if you've heard both arguments, if you've followed the world media, South African media, let us know your thoughts on the WhatsApp line 079 085 2511. We'd like to know your thoughts about the proceedings last week. I think the country came to a standstill, and we all, was glued to our TVs, radios, wherever you
Indeed.
had the opportunity to listen to that. But Advocate Yusuf, I want to ask, considering the counter arguments, right, put forth by Israel, what legal strategies were employed to challenge the allegations of genocide, and how effective were they in the context of international law, is what we were just talking about?
So I think many people has watched the submissions, or at least both parties' submissions, and it's quite common cause that Israel has rebutted the allegations made by South Africa. Mm-hmm. However, two things stands out in my observation, and the first one is that they've made submission to the fact that South Africa did not conform with the procedures and the uniform rules of that particular court. Right? And that's one of the reasons the matter should be dismissed. Okay. However, a court can dispense of a rule. Right. But application needs to be made in respect thereof. Okay. The second one is they claim that South Africa did not substantiate that they had the intention to commit the act of genocide. And because of that, the court does not have jurisdiction to hear the matter. Wow. Because the court only has a jurisdiction, even in terms of the convention, to hear matters pertaining to genocide. And their argument is that it's an allegation, unsubstantiated, and therefore the court does not have jurisdiction, and the court is duty bound to then dismiss the application. But that is neither here nor there at this stage, because the court will have to make a determination based on the merits and the submissions of South Africa's legal team, together with Israel's version, and make a determination whether there was intention or not. Right. The intention is important especially in crime, right. Or in anything in law. What was your intention? They call it dolus specialis in this instance. Okay. They said they did not have this intention, and therefore the court cannot hear it. But South Africa has made some submissions that would be probable in light of that, for a court to make the decision that it's possible and probable that acts of genocide has taken place, and therefore there were intention. One can argue that they've argued that there was no intention. The intention was to attack Hamas, for example. The civilians were present. They were warned to evacuate, over a period of time. They failed to evacuate, and yet they attacked. And that caused a humanitarian crisis.
Correct.
So, while I'm hoping the court will ask him, what steps have you taken to ensure that those civilians and the population have indeed evacuated, and
as well,
when you attacked your intended
target,
and that is Hamas, as they allege. So, we're hoping that the court would, ask such questions in the order and then judgment.
Being in the legal fraternity, surely you must have had so many calls, conversations with people, your colleagues in the legal field as well. And I can only imagine that this sets such a different outlook on how the world sees us and how our legal fraternity sees this case going forward.
Yeah.
You must have been inundated.
Yes, yes. I've had conversation with many, and some felt that Israel has presented a more robust
Case.
and promising case
Interesting.
than South Africa, but it's a version,
Right.
right? And
Right.
therefore there are 17 judges,
Correct.
you know, to
Yeah.
make, or 15 judges to make a decision.
Correct. Yeah.
Whose version is more plausible,
Right.
you know,
Right. Right.
and that is important. We can all have our opinions in the legal fraternity, but those judges out there or up there will then make a decision as
Absolutely.
to what it is.
Well, let us know your view on the WhatsApp line 0790852511. We're chatting about the ICJ case that happened last week. We anticipating the verdict over the next week or so. We have Advocate Yusuf Khan Dalwai in studio who's unpacking this case from a legal standpoint. And if you are, by the means, WhatsApp us and let us know your thoughts. You are still watching Hilaal Live. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us on channel 347. We invite you to be part of today's conversation. I have Advocate Yusuf Khan Dalwai in studio chatting about the ICJ case and the possible ruling that's we're all anticipating. Do join us on the WhatsApp line 0790852511. Let us know your thoughts about our brave legal team that represented South Africa last week. We had the counter arguments by the team from Israel. And what do you anticipate going to happen? Advocate, thanks so much for joining us in studio. Really appreciate it. We've been keeping an eye closely from Hilal's point of view, and we've had various input on what could possibly happen as well. Our legal team's back in South Africa. They had a warm reception at Johannesburg or OR Tambo International. But I want to ask, Advocate, if Israel were charged with genocide, okay, what legal avenues might be pursued to enforce accountability? Because that's number one, what they need to face, right? And then also ensure that justice for the affected people of Palestine, of Gaza, both within the region and internationally as well, because surely this is then going to set a precedent for international rulings thereafter.
Yes, if I can just clarify something, the determination or the judgment of being found guilty is a separate case.
Okay. So this is
that's been investigated by the International Criminal Court.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think 2021 they launched that investigation.
Okay.
That's still ongoing. War crimes, genocide.
I see.
So that still needs to be determined. These determinations and findings and judgments takes years.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Right. So what South Africa has done, considering the fact that understanding that this can take quite some time, South Africa is demanding a provisional and interim ceasefire, interim measures pending the outcome of the final hearing in respect of the determination of
this is to get genocide. The ball rolling.
To get the ball rolling and also to ensure that there is prevention of any further humanitarian crisis, war crimes, genocide, any the Palestinian population that's suffering at the moment.
Of course.
You know, not only physically, mentally, the buildings.
Absolutely.
And the main key factor is irreparable harm that's been caused to the nation of Palestine.
Yeah.
So South Africa, in the submissions or in the prayers, has requested a provisional, had a list of provisional items for ceasefire, so that the nation and the population of Palestine is preserved, and no further war crimes or genocide is acted, or military campaign continues in Palestine.
Do you find that the media has played a big role in influencing how the judges would think?
Judges will take into consideration what the global opinions are, but it's only there to, it will be taken into consideration, but the law is the law, you know. They will look at the law itself. They will look at the versions, what is plausible, what is probable, what is beyond reasonable doubt, apply the law into the scenario, and taking into consideration what everyone else is saying. I believe that is definitely something.
Let's look at South Africa's case first. What stood out for you? Some of the key points they brought home. What are some of the key points that you feel they had a very strong case about?
I do feel they've unpacked the acts of genocide quite comprehensively. They've made submissions, substantiated it quite well. Also take into consideration that South Africa is not impacted by the military campaign.
Right. Exactly, yes.
They are only a party to the convention, and an interested party to the convention and to Palestine, and that's what gives them the authority or capacity to act in this matter. So I do believe that they won't have every single fact available. Right. But what is apparent and what is on the surface and what is presented, that was sufficient enough for them to obviously make
put their case forward.
Submissions.
Okay, so let's take a couple of scenarios. The case goes through. The court finds that Israel is in breach of the Genocide Convention. What happens then?
Then an order will be granted, or a judgment will be handed down, and it will be in the judgment. It will state that Israel will have to desist from causing any military campaign in Palestine and causing any acts of genocide or creating a humanitarian crisis in Palestine.
But there has been people in support of Israel, in support of what Israel is doing. There have been people in the media, on social media, saying Israel will not adhere to whatever the ruling is.
So now the court judgment, the problem with this is the ICJ, the court judgment, is not enforceable.
Correct.
Right. And Israel and Palestine will have a judgment before them to adhere to.
Okay.
And if either party does not adhere to the judgment, it's not going to go well globally.
Exactly.
Especially in the convention, in further international criminal court proceedings, ICJ proceedings. You know, it's you're going to break ties with
so many
other allies that you have. Globally, you're going to be looked at as, you know, acting in bad faith all the time. And ideally, when you're going to court, you need to do so without fear and favor. And when you're doing so, you've got to do so in good faith. And when there's an outcome, because you're doing that, so whatever the outcome is and the decision is, you must take that and act in good faith. You know, so we've seen how Israel tore up directives, you know, on international TV in the past. So we just hope and pray, whatever the decision is, that, you know, it would be adhered to, you know, for the best interest of humanity. Because this issue of Palestine is far beyond religion now. It's really a humanitarian issue. Globally, we've seen protests, we've seen pickets, we've seen support coming from all types of religion.
International waters, they've stopped ships from you know, going through no-fly zones as well. The world is now obviously starting to see the need and the urgency behind a ceasefire. I want to just bring it back very quickly in terms of you've handled so many cases, you've been in court a few times as well. Have you ever lost your paperwork? Has it happened? I mean, were you so overwhelmed that you lost your train of thought?
It can happen.
Right.
I won't lie to you.
Okay.
It can happen. you can be put on the spot by a presiding officer.
Right. And this is the world stage
and
as
you
well.
jumble and you rumble and
Yeah.
you look for something. But if you're going according to your submissions, if you're doing if you're at a hearing and you're busy with your submissions,
Yeah.
and you're going in an order, you're reading out your submissions, just page by page.
Correct. Yeah.
No judge is saying, okay, let me go to, I'm asking you a question, and you need to go to page 112 and
Yes.
now look for it and something happens.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Okay,
But
so
it can happen. It can happen.
I had to ask that question. They've made reference also to South Africa, especially with Myanmar, the atrocities that has happened. Is this going to set a precedent for what else is happening around the world?
Indeed, this case will set a very, very good precedent for the other atrocities taking with Myanmar, whether it's Russia, Congo, some other Middle Eastern countries. So yes, it will definitely set a precedent, and it would definitely pave the way forward for a more peaceful environment and resolution moving forward.
It's just way too much in terms of, we look at all the videos, pictures, all of that, and it's overwhelming. Some people are traumatized by what is going on, and it's not nice to watch as well. So the world is calling for a ceasefire. The world is calling for this to come to an end immediately as well.
We're living in the modern world.
True.
Is there still need for military combat?
Absolutely.
You know, we have courts, we have presiding officers, we have seasons.
It can take a different avenue.
It can take a different avenue, but I understand, the whole topic, it's a different topic on its own. And conquering
I suppose if you have a militant
and,
background, your thinking is different.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Advocate, thanks so much for coming into studio, shedding the light and, put it in layman's terms as well for us to understand, because we're all worried. We're all concerned, and we'd like this to end very, very soon as well. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
And that's how we end our legal hour on Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us on Channel 347. Really appreciate it. From the Cape Town team, Sohail Barnes and myself, Luqman Shadrack, we now hand over to the Johannesburg team that will take you through to the rest of Hilaal Live. We're back tomorrow. Don't forget, it's the Motor Show tomorrow. Do join us for that. It's going to be exciting. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.